Indonesia and Malaysia have had a long history of conflict. Confrontations erupted during President Sukarno's presidency. Malaysian Federation State, in Sukarno's opinion, was a British ploy to destabilize Southeast Asia. Sukarno was the driving force behind the Ganyang Malaysia movement. The British had governed Malaya since the middle of the 18th century. The independence of Malaya, Pulau Pinang and Melaka was achieved on August 31, 1957 under the name Persekutuan Tanah Melayu. Singapore was still under British rule at that time because of its strategic location. Likewise with Sabah, North Borneo, Sarawak and Brunei. The idea of Malaysian Federation State was first proposed by the Prime Minister of the Federation of Malaya, or Persekutuan Tanah Melayu, Tunku Abdul Rahman, on the 27th of May 1961 in front of the Foreign Correspondent Association in Singapore. According to him, the federation would include the coalition of Tanah Melayu, Singapore, Sarawak, Sabah and Brunei. After a meeting between Tunku Abdul Rahman and British Prime Minister Sir H. Macmillan in London, British expressed support. Then fact-finding commission was formed, chaired by Lord Cobbold, to conduct a public opinion poll on the idea. This idea did not go smoothly, especially in Brunei. Although Sultan Omar Ali Saifuddin III supported, the people's leaders rejected the plan. One of the most strongly opposed was the Brunei People's Party, the largest party in Brunei, led by A.M. Azhari. A.M. Azhari made 17 requests in response to Tun Abdul Rahman's proposal. One of them, to form the unitary state of North Kalimantan, a proposed political entity which would have comprised their British colonies of Sarawak, British North Borneo, now known as Sabah, and the Protectorate of Brunei. Because based on history, Sarawak and Sabah are part of the Bruneian Empire. Sultan Omar Ali Saifuddin III will be the head of state of the unitary state of North Kalimantan. In the future, after a fair and democratic election is held, the new government of the unitary state of North Kalimantan, and the Malayan Federation, as two equal states, will negotiate the establishment of the Malaysia Federation State. This proposal was submitted by A.M. Azhari, to the Prime Minister of the Malaya Alliance, Tunku Abdul Rahman. But instead of getting an answer, A.M. Azhari was instead offered the position of Deputy Prime Minister too if he wanted to support the Malaysian Federation State. Wow, this is already a dirty game in politics. I also said, Tun, I am waiting for news from Tunku regarding 17 articles. It's not that I want to hear about this bribe, political bribe. This offer makes A.M. Azhari assess that Tunku Abdul Rahman did not have good intentions regarding the plan to form the Malaysian Federation State. In an effort to fight for the unitary state of North Kalimantan, A.M. Azhari then went abroad, to conduct international diplomacy at the United Nations. However, unbeknownst to A.M. Azhari, there was an extraordinary upheaval in Brunei. Fighters supporting the unitary state of North Kalimantan, from Brunei, Sarawak and Sabah, launched an armed insurgency. A.M. Azhari was furious over the rebellion. The reason is, diplomacy at the UN is starting to show a bright spot. On the other hand, the Brunei Parliament is controlled by the Brunei People's Party. However, it was too late. Brunei was confronted with a revolt by the North Kalimantan National Army, Tentera Nasional Kalimantan Utara, in December 1962. British troops were dispatched from Singapore to Brunei in reaction. And the revolt was subdued within days. Indonesia began broadcasting remarks in support of the movement in the final days of the revolt, culminating in a violent dispute between Indonesia and Malaysia. Sukarno abruptly objected to the plan. The foundation of the Malaysian Federation state was seen as a project of British neo-colonialism by Sukarno. Sukarno was concerned that Malaya would become a base for Western forces in Southeast Asia. The base could threaten Southeast Asian stability, posing a threat to Indonesia's national security. Some, on the other hand, claim that this criticism is entirely technical. Behind that claim is Sukarno's drive for territorial expansion and a desire to provide circuses to the Indonesian people instead of bread to divert their attention away from hunger, unemployment, and a collapsing economy. This accusation is false. Sukarno made no direct claims to incorporate northern Borneo into Indonesian Kalimantan. Towards, and, from the beginning, Indonesia's independence, the founders of the Indonesian state agreed that the territory of the Indonesian state was the territory of the former Dutch East Indies, a Dutch colony. Therefore, Indonesia never insisted on claiming the eastern part of the island of Timor, which was part of the Portuguese colony. Likewise with North Borneo, which is a British colony. Although the two regions have cultural closeness to Indonesia. On the other hand, Indonesia was preoccupied with advancing its claim to West New Guinea, as the territory was part of the Dutch colony in the archipelago. This understanding of Indonesia is different from that of the Philippines. The Philippines claimed East and North Borneo, arguing that the Borneo colony had historical links with the Philippines, through the Sulu archipelago. Regarding the desire to give a circus instead of bread to the Indonesian people, this is also wrong. The minds of the Indonesian people are distracted from the crumbling economy. It is the impact of confrontation, not a motive for confrontation. These are clearly two different views. However, on July 9, 1963, Prime Minister, Tunku Abdul Rahman, signed the London Agreement, which stipulated that the Federation of Malaysia would be founded on August 31, 1963. Tensions were eased after talks between the two governments in Manila from July 30 to August 5. At the Manila summit, Sukarno and Philippine President Diosdado Macapagal formally agreed to recognize the formation of Malaysia if a majority of people in North Borneo and Sarawak voted in favor of it in a UN-sponsored referendum. Indonesia, on the other hand, considered their announcement on August 29 that the Federation of Malaysia would be constituted on September 16 as a betrayal of trust.
Sukarno tidak mendurhakai Manila Agreement. Macapagal tidak mendurhakai Manila Agreement. Yang mendurhakai Manila Agreement ialah Tunku Abdul Rahman Bumrah, antek daripada imperialisme.
The Federation was established on September 16. But Brunei declined to participate. It was followed by the withdrawal of Singapore from the Federation in 1965. President Sukarno responded by announcing a Ganyang Malaysia or Crush Malaysia campaign on September 25, 1963. And then there was the Indonesia-Malaysia clash, which lasted from 1963 to 1966. The disagreement in the midst of the Indonesian army aggravated the situation. Furthermore, General Ahmad Yani's declaration that he would not send soldiers into Malaysia. Even nevertheless, Sukarno's fixation with destroying Malaysia remained unquenchable. In fact, after the September 30 movement, the army proceeded to whittle away at his influence. Sukarno was a fighter who never gave up. Sukarno almost definitely mentioned confrontational politics in each of his addresses to keep morale high while also asking for the Indonesian people's support. "This is my chest, where's your chest?" were two slogans promoted by Sukarno at the time. President Sukarno never hated Malaysia. Sukarno only opposed the policy of Prime Minister of the Federation of Malaya, Tuanku Abdul Rahman, which had the potential to disrupt the stability of Southeast Asia, as well as a policy that was based on imperialism, related to the voices of the people of North Kalimantan who wanted to be independent and form their own state. Sukarno's anger peaked when Tuanku Abdul Rahman betrayed the Manila Accord, 1963. On August 11, 1966, President Suharto concluded the confrontation by signing a peace treaty with Kuala Lumpur and restoring regular relations with Malaysia,